I'm Allison Jonjak, the Cranberry Outreach Specialist with the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension. These videos are the on-demand recordings of UW Extension and the Wisconsin State Cranberry Growers Association's virtual brown bag lunch series. These monthly sessions offer growers and researchers a way to share timely and relevant information. We hope you'll enjoy and continue to engage with us.
Hi, everyone. My name is Grant Holly. I'm the Executive Director of the Wisconsin State Cranberry Growers Association. We are very happy to be able to partner with UW Extension to bring you the research needed to be able to navigate our ever-changing environment. I'd like to thank all of our speakers today for their valuable time and leadership, the growers for joining us, and Allison for being the catalyst from which all of these sessions rely. Thank you so much.
I do have Ana Maria Vasquez Catoni of the Holland Lab is still collecting more responses for that survey she has. So this is a grower survey for, I believe, Wisconsin cranberry operators. If you're a Wisconsin operator and you haven't filled that out yet, go ahead and capture that QR code. So this is the June 28th, 2024, the June Cranberry Brown Bag. We have some pretty exciting talks. Like I said, we've been looking forward to this water and nutrient uptake into berries speech from Amaya, and that's going to be 30 minutes of our content today. Then we're going to have Q&A for Amaya as she will head out to give one of her students is doing their thesis presentation, and then Pam is going to give us a field update. And then Pam, I believe we can see my screen now, so you should be good to take it away.
Yep, we can see it. Yeah, and I just sent a bunch of pictures to her right before this, so thank you for throwing them up there last minute. So this one is prompting me to talk about pollination. A lot of growers are like, man, my bees aren't working. What's going on this year? And we're out there doing the bee surveys with, we're working with Claudio and Hannah Gaines on collecting bee surveys. And this year, we can tell you absolutely we're seeing less activity than last year. And then we're not done yet. There's still blossoms out there. We're still going to do more surveys. But Hannah said in apples, like their work is done, and literally they had half as many visits in apples this year than last year. So what you're seeing is happening, but we'll just see what happens after. Okay. All right, this one is false blossom. This time of the year, it's really easy to see. It has those like witch's broom sticking up blossoms. And again, this is spread by the blunt nose leafhopper, we believe. And I wouldn't say there's a lot more popping up. Maybe like one or two properties. We found like a few more little areas, but it's kind of similar to last year. Okay, this is the one to kind of follow up Amaya's presentation on fertilizer. This year, this happened probably like last week when it was raining a lot. And what happened is the grower put his fertilizer out and it was supposed to rain. So he didn't water it in right away. But again, you guys, if even if you have a little dew or something and that fertilizer sticks to your blossoms, it will burn it. So even if it's going to rain, just try to like get it rinsed off and then let the rain incorporate it later. But if you don't, then this will happen. And we're starting to see what is probably going to be early rot. If you look really close, you can see the little black pycnidia on this. This is like a 2-year-old planting. So it's out there, and I think I've been telling my guys, if you're on the fence, this is probably going to be a year of pathogens just because of the hot temperatures, and then it's spreading with water and it's raining so much. So that is probably going to be early rot. Talking about the rain, a lot of water in the ditches. Growers are just trying to get rid of the water. I think you can keep flipping because I think the next few are just either ditching. Yep, get in there, ditch it, cut the grass, adjust your flood ditches around, just try to get the water to move off your beds. I think the next one might be, yeah, if you look close, the blossoms, if they are wet too long, you will lose them. So this guy lost probably about a foot and a half of blossoms all along the edge. So
I had a question come in. Do we have any idea as to why bee activity is down? Does it have to do with the weather variation from last year to this year?
Yeah, so that would be my guess. I asked Hannah what she thought too. And so like last week, for example, there were a lot of clouds and it rained. And the best environment for bees is when you can see your shadow. So if you could see your shadow and it's like a gentle breeze or no breeze, then we see a lot more bees in our surveys. So our surveys, if you're not familiar, we use the Weebee app and we stand out there for 5 minutes and observe the bees. And if it's really windy, they're just not out there. And if it's cloudy and if it's rainy or wet, they're just not out there. Hannah is also collecting pollen from the different honeybee hives. So she's going to be analyzing that to see if they are working another crop, like a non-crop plant or something that maybe this year is blooming or better because of the rain. I don't know. But that would be my guess is the weather. She says there are variations in bee colonies from year to year, but typically not honeybee because they're I can see this question, the native bees. So bumblebees, this is just purely from doing the Weebee observations. So bumblebees in my observations tend to not be as picky. So when it is cloudy, we'll sometimes see more bumblebee activity than honeybee. There are growers that have the bumblebee hives and honeybee hives. And if they do have both, we tend to see more bumblebees when it's cloudy. The native bees and like wild bees, I would say it's pretty strong. I mean, I don't have the data yet from all of our surveys, but we're doing like 500 surveys this year. So that's 500 stops in the cranberries and then whatever Hannah and her crew is doing. So she should have some pretty interesting data for us at the end of this pollination.
And Hannah did commit to giving us an article in the August, like the first August Cranberry Crop Management Journal that's going to have all the details of who visited where and what results in cranberry this year. So looking forward to reading that.
Yeah, and one of the observations we're doing is marsh edge. So along the tree line, along the reservoirs, along where maybe you have a pollinator garden versus the center of the marsh, which is just that in the middle. And just from my observations, I do see more native bee activity on the edge, which is probably assumed to be the case everywhere.
Mm-hmm. I think let's keep having questions come in. I will show this. Anna Maria has her screen cap or take that QR code to take her survey. It is intended for cranberry growers in the US and in Canada. So no need if you're Canadian or if you're Massachusettsian or if you're Oregonian, you may still take that survey and contribute. So I just figured while we take questions, I could show that. Other questions coming in for Pam? I guess I can still continue to give the, if you do see false blossom, as she noted, this is a good time of year for noticing that. I believe that Leslie and her team are still taking volunteers that would be anonymous, but being able to participate in research, whether you want advice in roguing that out or whether you would like to have it be participating in research, reach out to Leslie, which is Leslie, laholland@wisc.edu. Or you can write to me and I'll connect you. But if you go direct to Leslie, that can stay anonymous too. Yeah, do we have concern about pollen being washed off by the rain?
I don't know if Amaya wants to answer that or not, but
Amaya,
that is definitely something that a lot of growers ask.
I'm not, an expert on this. We should have an entomologist here to talk about this, but I wouldn't think so because the stigma, around the stigma, it's really sticky. So once the pollen lands there, it just stays with this kind of like sticky substance around it. So I wouldn't be concerned that it's gonna wash off. I think the biggest concern and why we see less pollination is just because we see the pollinators are just less activity. But once it lands there, and the conditions are adequate, you will have the germination of that pollen really fast, and fertilization will happen very fast. So I wouldn't be concerned about the pollen washing off, but I haven't done the research and it's not my area of expertise. So that's what I think.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm not sure either. I know just when we're out there doing our percents, we always kind of brush the tops to see what petals fall. And usually we see like all the little smoke, the little pollen just flying around. But when it is wet and when there is dew, obviously that's not flying around. So I'm not sure. I see that Lindsay's on here. I'm kind of curious how the East Coast is looking for disease and if you got as much rain as we did. And if you, I don't know, if you want to comment on anything.
Jeez, putting me on the spot, Pam.
Thank you.
We have not had much rain at all. Unfortunately, we're pretty dry. We've gotten a few pretty timely rainstorms, so I'm thankful for that. But we've had kind of the opposite of you guys this year, where we've had pretty good pollination weather. But that being said, we've been really, really hot. So, you know, upwards of 90 almost every day during bloom. So 90 Fahrenheit, I should say. Yeah, but we'll see. So we moved through bloom, or we're moving through bloom pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's another comment I will make, is that the bloom is not progressing super fast. We were doing our bloom calculations, and during that time was pretty warm, and we were getting probably like the 10% gain per day. But now as we're moving out of bloom and we're trying to time the fruitworm sprays, I would say more like the 5%. Like it's hanging on, which hopefully will help us later when we get some good weather. But
I need to make a verbal correction. I had put up our next slide here saying that our July brown bag is going to be back to the normal third Friday of July 15th. And then also I had an error up. The summer field day is correctly going to be Wednesday, August 14th. So that's Wednesday, August 14th at Cutler Cranberry in City Point. And I just wanted to make sure that I verbally said the correct thing so that no one has the wrong thing stick in their mind. Had another question, may the pollen die because of the hotter temperature? Probably referring to New Jersey's.
It doesn't die, but it would desiccate.
Might desiccate, okay.
And so as soon as you get the pollen out and it's really, really hot and dry, it just desiccates, and then you don't have any germination. And also the stigmas of the flowers will desiccate, and the life of the flower itself will be a lot shorter, and the stigma can dry. And then once the stigma, which is the top of the bottle in the female structure of the flower where the pollen needs to land, if that dries, then it doesn't matter if you have a lot of pollen there, the pollen is not going to be able to germinate and get all the way into the ovary to fertilize those ovules to have the fruit. Is
that once it begins to get dry, if you get rain and it rehydrates, is it okay, or is it an irreversible process?
For the stigma, irreversible. Yeah, for the pollen, I don't know. Again, I think that's a good question for an entomologist.
Okay, yeah, fair point. I really appreciate all the questions coming in. Appreciate Pam for her presentation today and Amaya for her presentation today. We've still got time for 2 to 3 more questions. So good, we've got one. After fruit set, what causes a plant to abort fruit?
Well, multiple things. One of them could be, and this is very appropriate with some of the information that Pam was sharing. It might just be that there was really no fertilization. There's no seeds, there's no embryo being developed there. And so the development of the fruit, sorry, Amaya is going to get into her plant physiology lecture here.
We need.
How does the fruit develop? The fruit develops because when the pollen germinates and those ovules are being fertilized, and we have the beginning of the formation of the embryo in the seed, that kind of like triggers this production of hormones, and that stimulates that the ovaries, the wall of the ovaries starts developing into the fruit, okay? Sometimes you can get that stimulation and a little bit of development and enlargement of the walls of the ovaries, and so what start to look like a fruit is going to develop just by having pollen land in the stigma, but not necessarily for fertilization. So this happens a lot in many, many fruits. So you see that initial, kind of like enlargement and started like a production of fruit, but then it stops because there's really no embryo that is continuing to produce those hormones. It's just the initial stimulation from the pollen. But then if fertilization never happened and there's no embryo there, it would die. And so we see that that really happens a lot. This is also the process by which we create seedless fruit. So when you eat some oranges, they're seedless. In this case, those fruits are able to develop even when there's no embryo because there's such a stimulation, and you can do it with application of exogenous hormones, that it will trigger the enlargement of the ovaries. So that's how we do, seedless fruit. But here, for your point, what's happening is that might be that you got some pollen on the stigma of the flowers, and that is stimulated a little bit the initial enlargement of the walls of the ovary. But then what is needed to continue to get a full development of fruit is that embryo, and if it's not there, then the fruit would just abort. I don't think, or maybe I haven't dig really well in the literature or don't remember anymore, but I don't think, I want to remember that somebody did a study in which they specifically kind of like, they were doing thinning, so they were removing some of the berries to see how much of an impact that would have in developing more fruit, thinking that, oh, maybe the upright self-regulate. But I don't think that is something that happens on cranberry. Well, in apples, we know very well something that we call the June drop, in which you see a lot of fruits that just drop out of your apple trees when they're still tiny. And that's because the tree is self-regulating, because it can take to completion all of the apples in the trees. I've never seen that on cranberries. It's just, you just see that they just stop developing. And I don't know if that's because it's self-regulating and stops developing certain fruit, or it's mostly due because they were not properly pollinated, which is my gut feeling that that's really what's happening. Sorry for the very long answer.
No, we appreciate it. We have made it to 1 o'clock, so I want to just take one last minute to thank Amaya, thank Pam, thank the Growers Association, along with UW-Madison for supporting our virtual brown bag series as always.